Hello and welcome back to the DCPerform Podcast. Happy New Year. My name is Rachael Weber. Well, thanks for joining us today. We have two great guests joining us, Aris Hoath and Stuart Plath, who are both members of the DCPerform team. And together, we're going to explore that current transition that's happening as baby boomers are aging and we're moving into the next generation gaining buying power. Thanks for tuning in to the DCPerform Podcast and Happy New Year. Aris and Stuart, great to have you guys on the DCPerform Podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's happy to be here.
Stuart, you are on the engineering team. You're one of our key engineers.
Correct, yeah.
And Aris, you're one of our directors. So you're, the frontline worker working with the customer, along with the engineering team, building, fostering those relationships. So why don't you guys give a little background about who you guys are and what your role is?
Been in the engineering world for a while now, coming up on almost 10 years. And with our role at DCPerform, being the lead engineer and as well as project manager, so including project management and site management.
What about you, Aris?
Went to Purdue University, graduated 2019 in sales and management, and then I went into the manufacturing industry doing sales there in Indiana. Moved out to Phoenix with my wife, and I've been in the supply chain material handling industry since 2020 now.
I wanted to go ahead and define each of the generations that are most relevant to what we're going to talk about today. We have that baby boomer generation born in 1946 to 1964, and then we go to Generation X, which was 1965 to 1980. The millennial generation, or the Gen Y generation, 1981 to 1996, and then that Generation Z is 1997 to 2010. Aris, you and I were talking about this the other day. There's that subgroup in there that had that exposure. It's a little bit different than a millennial or a Gen Z.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in a gray area in between those generations. As I said at the beginning, we grew up with both the older technology and the newer technology rapidly advancing.
That technology was introduced to us at a time in our lives where it was easier for us to learn it because it is something that we could focus on a little bit more. And I think the younger generations probably historically and probably will always have kind of a leg up on that in terms of understanding how newer technologies work and how they can be used.
Let's just start from the beginning before we get into the thick of things. So the technological advancements in day-to-day life have extremely grown over the years. Different generations are getting a different level of exposure. So I'm curious to hear from you guys, what was your exposure like as a child to technology? And, are there any experiences that have impacted the way that you think about things?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were kind of that first generation that grew up with a DVD and a VCR player in the same console together, right?
Yep.
We were right on that verge of the smart technology, and I think we were like 11, 12 when the first iPhone came out. I think we were the first generation to truly grow up with the technology, and that just learned us, ever-changing adaptation cycle.
I was, 15, and I had a flip phone, which was like a game changer.
Yeah.
And then today where smartphones, I don't know. It's insane.
Something about the way that I grew up too is that I felt like I was really exposed to technology on a different level just because my parents were both in the tech industry. Just that exposure and their passion for technology and how it was always evolving and we were always getting that, next greatest thing really shaped, I think, who I am today. And I think another thing too that I've naturally developed over time just with that early exposure to technology, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but is that instinctual habit to troubleshoot different issues when you're working with a software piece of technology.
You gotta start with turning it on, turning it off again.
Yeah.
Start there first, and then go.
And I'm sure from the engineering side too, you see a lot of that with customers. I mean.
Yeah, well, especially on the control side, you see the comfortability that clients have. A lot of times they immediately think it's a sensor issue or a control issue as opposed to something mechanical.
There's definitely a shift in buying power that's happening right now. As baby boomers are aging, their spend is now trending towards health over lifestyle things. That ideal customer profile to some brands is definitely shifting or needing to shift. In light of the customer experience, what's of value to our generation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's convenience and choice would be two main values from our generation. I mean, take my wife, for example. She orders her clothing on a website. They advertise this process where she can pick whatever she wants online, and in 2 days it gets delivered to the house. And then on her own time, she can try what works, what doesn't, And then whatever she doesn't want, she just puts it in a box at the end with the pre-packaged shipping label. Yep. And then I take it to the post office for her.
You're the delivery man.
Yeah, I'm the delivery man.
Yep.
And I throw it in the box and we get our money back. And they advertise that process, and they have so many more options than a brick and mortar store, because companies realize it's a lot more efficient to just ship directly from a DC. You can pack 10,000 SKUs in there versus a brick and mortar store that can maybe only hold 10, 20.
Yep.
From a company perspective, like how can you better position yourself to be constantly in front of, your customer? Brick and mortar, the only time you're in front of them is when they drive by. So if you're able to, in the digital age, be able to position yourself online with a website or through social media on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, however you're able to be in front of, your consumer, that's going to be the way to do it. The tools that you give them to buy and make that experience simpler and more enjoyable, they're going to keep coming back.
I read this study by McKinsey, and they worked with a consumer trend research agency, and they conducted a study in Brazil in the 3 major cities. And they chose Brazil because 20% of the population is Gen Z. They're trying to gain a better understanding of how that generation and the way they think is impacting the broader population. They found that Gen Z behaviors are all anchored in one element, which is the generation's search for truth. So Gen Zs value individual expression and avoid labels. They take action for a variety of causes, and they believe in using effective dialogue to solve conflicts and improve the world. They're thinking about the broader population. What do you think that the reasoning behind these generational changes in customer experiences is?
I think it's the flip side, where it's not the generation that defines what their need is. I think it's the external circumstances that allow them the opportunity to realize those needs. And what I mean by that is, a lot of causes, and there's a lot of values and passions that our generation has for causes around the world. Well, this is the first generation we've ever been in where we can pick up our phone and type anything into the internet and know what's going on around the globe. And so we can pick and choose what our values lie in.
We're talking more about like consumer ethics in terms of, what they value goes beyond just the quality of the product and the quality of the service. It ties to, like you were mentioning, every aspect of, the company's leadership that they're buying from, where the products are being manufactured, what materials are being used, what kind of waste is that company generating. And, that brings up a lot of like the ESG conversations.
Do you think that there's any macro events in the past that have had an impact on the way that newer generations are reacting to different things?
I like to take the saying, work with yourself, not against yourself. So if there are things that you habitually do that are inevitable, you might as well figure out how to work those to your advantage than try to eliminate them, because it's going to be a lot harder, right? In today's world, the power of the dollar and the consumerism, that's the inevitable. It's here to stay, and we're not going to change that. So to leverage that to our benefit, the inevitable, let's take our values of environmentalism and a better future and shift that to what we buy. And we've seen that companies have started to go green now, more green initiatives. And I don't think that's just a cash grab. I think there's genuine reason behind that. I think there are a lot of companies out there who genuinely want to make a better impact. But we're helping, we're fixing, and addressing our values by using the inevitable to our advantage.
As time goes on, a lot of the upper level management and the executives of these companies are going to be the millennial and Gen Z generation. So their values that they've had for a long time, and especially in terms of how they buy things, is going to translate into how they run their companies.
Younger generations are almost demanding that companies get on with the environmental initiative, or else they've kind of taken a stance against them. Aris, you had mentioned that you had worked with someone that was starting to roll out a more sustainable option in their distribution method.
Yeah, they're getting rid of all their foam, and they're going to a more reusable type of packaging that's biodegradable. And it's just those little things, helping that green initiative and trying to drive their business forward into that new era to align with the generation that's now the mass population of consumers, align their business with our values and needs.
And those changes, too, are going to create other industries, especially like, if we're looking at biodegradable materials for packaging or even, in the product itself. We don't quite have those at a large scale, but with that demand, this is going to grow that industry quite a bit.
So with all of these big changes happening, how are we helping our customers be better for their customers?
So a lot of it comes down to the sustainability aspect. The engineering side, we're looking at the operation. Where are the efficiencies had? Where can we eliminate the waste? Where can we make these certain operations safer or more efficient for their employees? Ultimately, be able to deliver a better quality product and better quality service to their end user. It's not just so much, how can we reduce bottom line or anything like that. It's how can we actually create some changes that are felt beyond just the four walls of that facility.
We always have to be learning, right? We're not doing our job right if we're not learning. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know every single solution that's on the market now and what's going to be in 10 years. Up to us to keep updating ourselves with that information so we can guide our clients to the right solution that's fit for the time that they're in. Nowadays, when we enter into discussions with clients about what their next solution might be, there's typically a little bit of a push or drive to get the conversation towards those newer era solutions like AGVs, pick-to-light, robotics, things like that. And it's understandable. There's just not as many of these solutions on the market right now. And because of that, there's not as much performance data for them to go off of. And so naturally, they're going to want to see more upfront research to justify that investment. And I think in 10 to 15 years, if that, those solutions that were once kind of a push to get to are going to be the starting block.
Have you ever seen that where they want more of that research up front if it is something new? Do you think that's more trending because of the generation that they're from?
There's definitely a learning curve, but I think they're also seeing that this is becoming more of the norm. AMRs, AGVs, advanced robotics for shuttle picks, that's becoming much more common. And how do you compete, and how do you look at the benefits that gives your employees, and how does that benefit your operations? In order to thrive in this market, especially an e-commerce market, that you do have to be able to deliver way beyond what the expectation is, especially with Amazon now with same-day delivery. How do you compete with that? Those type of things are what are driving a lot of these conversations.
That's a great segue into really looking at the future. What's it going to be like when we're in the senior aging population? Where's technology now, and where do you think it's going to go?
My most favorite fun fact is that it was only 66 years between the Wright brothers first cracking the physics of flight and Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon. That means someone could have been born in 1895 when they were 8 years old, saw the first plane take off, witnessed the space race, the invention of rocket-propelled flight, and then when they were 74 years old, watched the moon landing.
Yep.
And it's just insanity to think that, in the course of one lifetime, we came that far. Now, in today's era, the technology race, we are advancing every single day faster than the last. And I think that's a recipe for something exciting. So I'm really eager to see what our next moon landing will be.
Do you guys think that any of these advancements in technology are having a negative impact?
Do we have 4 hours? No, there's plenty of data to back up both sides, I think. I mean,
Sure.
I remember when I was a kid, I got the first, you remember the Leap Pad? That was like the first tap-to-touch technology, and that was used for educational purposes, and it's great. And I think it's evolved, that path of technology. Now kids are learning to code in 6th grade, right? And I think that's a very positive thing. And then on the flip side, as I was saying earlier about having access to so much information, I think there is genuine conversation to be had of, is that healthy for us? But it's only going to get more advanced, and so we have to work with it.
It's ultimately going to come down to how quickly can we adapt to the changes that it's going to present, and how that translates into other aspects of the market, and for how that impacts our customers as well.
I don't think personally that we should think about technology as this dark cloud that looms over us. We have to all accept that it totally has pushed us in such an amazing direction and improved so many aspects of life. Livelihood, it's helping create solutions for farming, for instance. Urban areas, we have amazing transportation, healthcare, and that access to all that information has helped us come up with, if not cures, a lot of research into diseases and illnesses that at one point in time were considered terminal, and now we're able to help people survive. With this increased ability to communicate with anyone in the world, we're able to share points of views on how to solve a problem with other people across the world. It can be a little bit scary to see how fast we're growing in terms of technology, but so far there have been tremendous benefits to society as a whole. Thank you guys so much for joining. It was really great to have you guys. I hope to see you guys back on the show sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Not far away.
it.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you.